Welcome to another episode of Pound for Pound Box Report. We're finally on. Had some real technical issues on my end with StreamYard, but we're finally live. I'm your host, Michael. Joining me this week, Gail from Community Digital News, Daniel from the Inscriber. What's going on, lady and gent?
Hey, time's a wasted. Let's get to it.
Yeah, we have a lot.
Yeah,
We have a week to make up for. Yeah.
yeah. So we're going to be covering boxing that's occurred over the last two weekends. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report live YouTube show, podcast, as well as blog discussing all things boxing. Model is when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, we will talk about it. If you want to find any and all information regarding Pound for Pound Box Report, blog page is the place to go to, p4pboxreport.wordpress.com. That is the link. Check the top right-hand portion of the blog page. You will find the links to where to catch us all over social media. We're everywhere. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Facebook and Twitter mainly, as well as the YouTube page. I'm not on Instagram yet, so you can check the top right portion of the blog page where to find us all over social media. Also, where to find us on all platforms that carry RSS feeds, your Spotify, your iTunes, your SoundClouds, and whatnot. And on a personal note, I am an online coach for Beachbody.com. If you're interested in any and all things Beachbody, some of the programs, Shakeology, any of the challenge pack, I do have a link to my online fitness page. So if you want to check out any and all things Beachbody, want to check out my challenges, Let's Build Together, fitness challenges that I do. I plan to do one this month. Just check out p4pboxreport.wordpress.com. Let's get things going. We're not going to start doing our usual route, doing recaps and news and previews. Going to do a story here. It's kind of based off what was a fight that was supposed to happen. Kind of took over the boxing landscape in terms of news. This past weekend, Claressa Shields, was set. Claressa Shields, unified undisputed middleweight champion, was set to move down to 154 pounds to junior middleweight to fight Ivana Habazin. Habazin, excuse me if I'm pronouncing her name wrong. Fight was going to take place in Flint this past Saturday, but let's just not beat around the bush here. Chaos ensued at the weigh-in as a dust-up that eventually resulted in some really horrific injuries to James Ali Bashir. The trainer of Habazin forced the cancellation of the fight. Back and forth went down between Bashir and Shields' camp, and in what I consider a real soft, weak sucker move, Bashir was accosted, was snuffed from behind, left him with facial damage. He had to go to the hospital, have to have immediate surgery during the weigh-in, which took place Friday, October 4th. News broke yesterday, and I wrote about this for Three Kings Boxing. Shout out to the fellows over at Three Kings Boxing. Bashir had to be readmitted to the hospital yesterday due to what was determined to be a brain bleed. So some real tragic situations here. Shields has come out and she's but she's denounced the incident, said she's had nothing to do with it. I will say, for disclosure, there was an arrest made. Word is running rampant that the person who attacked Bashir from behind was Claressa Shields' brother. The situation is still ongoing. I'll go to you, Gail, first. No one's clean when it comes to this issue. The back and forth between Bashir and Shields' camp, I didn't like some of the rhetoric that Bashir used towards Shields' camp, particularly Shields' sister. But I also have to be honest, I didn't like a lot of the stuff that came from the Shields camp, what they were saying to him. And as I said, and I'll reiterate, strong word, includes word from witnesses who was there, said that it was Shields' younger brother who was the person who attacked Bashir from behind. That's about as low as you can get. Sure, Bashir was mouthy, Gail, and he said some inappropriate things, but in my view, that does not justify what happened to him. He's a 71-year-old man. You don't sit there and attack a 71-year-old man like that. If you have an issue with him, keep it cool, keep it gentlemanly, and step to him face to face. You're like, hey, I have a problem with what you're saying. I don't like it, blah, 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 and you go from there. Your thoughts on this whole situation? Because like I said, because no one is innocent here.
It seems like no one is innocent here, that's for sure. You know, why are people shocked that trash talk took place during and it wasn't a weigh-in, it was prior to the weigh-in. It is not uncommon for fighters before the official weigh-in, which are now public events and cameras are present and all that, and fans frequently. It's very common for them to test the scale because they've been weighing on their own scale. They aren't quite sure where they are that morning. Maybe they weighed in a hotel room, or if they're lucky enough to be at near camp, they often want to go get their feet on that scale early. So this was before the public portion of the event. Now, why you want to have a whole bunch of people around you, I don't know. But for those who wondered why there wasn't more control, it's because there wasn't a formal weigh-in going in. It was just people milling around on the stage. And they're in close quarters, and they decide to start mouthing off at each other. Like we're shocked that happens. Come on. It happens all the time in boxing. This edition did happen, apparently, to be particularly ugly. I get it. Ugly words have been quoted. They're bad. Don't like it. It's not the kind of ugly trash talk, I'm going to kick your ass kind of stuff. Pardon me, folks. Getting over a cold. It was more personal, and it was slurs, right? Bad stuff. I don't care how bad it got. Nobody should have been throwing punches at each other. And there are a lot of versions of the story about how it went down, about being about Shields' father telling it's actually her older brother to go kick Bashir's ass and defend his sister's honor, whatever it was. The bottom line is we know what the result was. An injury to Shields' opponent's trainer, a veteran of the sport, 70 years old. You got to give him credit. He was later quoted as saying the only thing that really upset him is that he didn't get a chance to fight back because he would have kicked this guy's ass. That's Bashir for you. But it put him in the hospital. It completely took the fight off the card. They never even weighed in. This was an event the entire city of Flint was looking to celebrate. This was about a whole lot more to that community than just a boxing event. It was supposed to be Shields' homecoming, and it turned into a big, damn hot mess. Now, there were a lot of discussions about it having been Shields' brother. The first official statement was from a Flint Police Department sergeant. I believe his name was Timothy Johnson. He was quoted in local Flint media saying that the individual believed responsible for the sucker punch that injured Bashir ran out of the building and was caught outside by another Flint police officer who happened to be working at a local elementary school, I guess, just down the street. So his bad luck. A man with the same name as Shields' brother is in Genesee County, which is where Flint is, jail. Jail inmate records are public. If somebody's sitting on their ass in jail and has been booked, you can go look it up. any member of the public. If you're a member of the news media, this is one of the skills you need to learn. Look up whose ass is in jail. Look up criminal records. So yes, her brother is currently being held. However, he's not been charged with this crime because, unfortunately, this young man in his late 20s already has a pretty extensive criminal record. He has served time for crimes of violence. He's served time for arson. So he was on parole for a 1977. He was on parole for a 2017 conviction. You know, he would have been off parole in a matter of weeks. Unfortunately, if this is the right person who committed this act, he ended up getting picked up on a parole violation. He hasn't been charged with a crime, but he's already violated his parole by being involved in an act of violence. What that means is you do not get a trial. You do not go before a judge. You do not have to be investigated or charged. You've immediately violated parole, and that means you do not pass go. You go back to jail, automatic for 6 months. Boom. He'll sit on his ass in Genesee County for 6 months, guaranteed, because he's committed a parole violation. What that means is there's no hurry to charge him with a new crime. In fact, if the DA wants to, they can let the clock tick, 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 tick for weeks, months if they feel like it, let everything calm down, take time to conduct a full investigation, get all the facts straight. They're under no time pressure at all. And I predict it'll be weeks, if not months, before they decide to charge him with the current crime, because they don't have to start doing a darn thing with him for 6 months. It's a horrible situation. I get it. Shields is perhaps trying to embrace her family. She's made no secret of the fact she had a very, very hard upbringing. She was abused as a child. She was raised by her now deceased grandmother. She's had to bring herself up, essentially. And, you know, considering all she's accomplished as an athlete, and the many good things she's done, it's an incredible story. It's an admirable outcome. However, if she wants to be the face of women's boxing, which she says she does, and she wants to be embraced by a wider audience, she has got to take a very hard look at who's around her and who can help her advance in the right way and who's going to cause her problems and be like a ball on a chain for her. And unfortunately, it seems some of the people that were there Friday could easily derail her career bigger than just one fight. She needs to cut them loose. She needs to be very honest, direct, and ruthless about it and cut them loose. And she would not be the first boxer or athlete, for that matter, in that position.
I'll go to you, Daniel. To Gail's earlier point, not only did it cancel the fight, it was a big event for Flint, and it would have been an economic boost for Flint. We know the situation that is ongoing when it comes to the water crisis. It's not finished, it's ongoing because the people there, they still don't have clean water. I don't care what the public officials say. The people on the ground will tell you they still don't have clean water. Impoverished area. With this fight, Shield was trying to give back to the community through her efforts in the ring. And that was all ruined by, in a selfish act, by a selfish individual or individuals. If you believe if you believe what you've been hearing from the streets, if you will, in terms of why was Bashir attacked and who did it and who told the person to do it, supposedly. again, no one's clean here. I don't like what Bashir said. Some of the comments, they were sexist. He talked about women know your place, and if you want to be, if you act like a man, be treated like a man. Many would view that as sexist. Do I agree with it? Absolutely not. I do not. But that does, but unfortunately, you hear that. One, two. There's a bigger picture, and three, and I can't emphasize this enough. If you have a problem with what he said, there's a way to handle it. And to snuff him like that, leave him with facial fractures, which require surgery, ultimately leading to a brain bleed, which has him in the hospital as we speak. That's not the way to do it, Daniel.
Sorry, but yeah, there's many ways this tournament have really gone sour. Now, let's tackle a lot of fronts when it came to it. Yes, Mr. Bashir did say some really dumb things and really some hypocritical things when you talk about women in their place in your front. And if that's your attitude, and like you could just say if that's your attitude, then why are you training women to be fighters?
Now I know it was it was in response to what Shields' sister was talking to him, but he could have handled that differently.
Yeah, but
I'll just say that. I'll
yeah,
just say that.
that's what I
But
mean.
he was upset. He was
Yeah,
upset.
that's what I mean. And I understand some of the thinking that went into it, but it doesn't excuse it. Now, going into the point, it is first of all, I'm a type of person that if you have a problem with me, I deal with you face to face. This is a situation where, okay, if you had a problem with Mr. Bashir, you deal with him face to face. You don't sucker punch a man in the back, let alone a 7-year-old man, a 70-year-old man, which is completely what happened here. Now, the situation is actually what's going to be more concurrent, unfortunately, is a lot worse and a lot deadlier situation on many fronts. Like, let's tackle what Gail mentioned. It's true. If you have a parole violation or if you have a probation violation, you don't have to be charged something new. They can keep you in jail. For parole, 6 months. For probation may be different, but they can keep you locked up. They don't have to really bring a charge back into it until later on. With Mr. Bashir's situation, though, it could be worse because he's in the hospital now in the brain bleed, like you reported and wrote about, and a prosecutor's plans may change drastically suddenly if Mr. Bashir's situation goes significantly for the worse because, okay, not only not a parole violation, now you're dealing with at least manslaughter.
Right.
So then you have no choice but then to bring it up. Which, from a public relations standpoint, is you have to look at it at that point. And when it's public relations standpoint, it's terrible for Shields because, unfortunately, due to her actions from previous years and actions to people around her, she has to fortunately develop a reputation of being a bit unruly and a bit of a loose cannon and somebody that is
I need you to cut something is playing in the background. Daniel, could you lower it, please?
I accidentally unmuted it. Okay, but that's what I mean. She has developed this. Claressa has unfortunately developed this reputation through the actions of her and her actions of people around her. For as much as she's tried to make a positive change and many things, she hasn't been able to fully change it. Because you could always bring up the Dirrell Usyk mess from the first fight, the sucker punch there, and then we could bring her up saying, "Yeah, Unc, that's how you handle it, Unc." People could bring that up, and it's something that she's not going to be able to wash off, especially with something like this, especially in an event where she was trying to make some type of history here, trying to hold, I think, belts in 3 different weight classes at the same time for women's boxing. That's not exactly an easy feat. Even with women's boxing not exactly being full in all divisions. And obviously, like you brought it up before, Fleon, I don't care what any of the officials in Michigan say right now. The previous governor pretty much made it impossible for people with sanity to believe that they have clean water right now. Even with the funding that was approved for it recently, nobody really believes that that city has clean water. And everybody pretty much knows that Flint doesn't exactly have the, like I said, most stellar reputation or more stellar economic standing in Michigan. So this was supposed to be a highlight for Shields, and now it's turned into a nightmare. And it could be even worse. Like I said, if Mr. Bashir's condition goes for the worse, which I really hope it's not, because like I said, yes, he did say things. It might be heat of the moment. He did act in a way that was inappropriate and unbecoming of a man his age. At the same time, you don't attack, like I said, you don't attack an old man, especially from behind. Because now you wind up getting worse.
And the thing was, and video showed this. Yes, he got into the dust up with Shields' camp and his sister, whatever, but he eventually sat down, and the sucker punch from behind, that had happened after things had reasonably calmed down.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like I said, it reminds me again of the whole Dirrell Usyk situation. Remember how we thought that calmed down after the way that fight ended? And then the sucker punch that came afterwards? It reminds me of that type of situation. And unfortunately, it's a black mark on a career of a woman in Shields who, like I said, for all her flaws, either inflicted by those around her or inflicted by herself, is, for all intents and purposes, one of the more dynamic and one of the more, in many ways, likable personalities that women's boxing has.
Long-term ramifications. Oh, I thought you was finished, Daniel. Go ahead.
No. That's what to say. Like, yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, the long-term ramifications.
Yeah, I'll go to Gail. Long-term ramifications for this, for Claressa Shields. I'm sure she's going to be asked about this in her next fight, probably the next fight after. But she's trying to become a marketable figure, not just in the rings or calling herself GWOAT, but have some mainstream appeal outside of the ring as well. How does this hurt that?
It does hurt it. It sets her back. She's going to have to work very hard to rebuild the damage to her reputation outside the ring from something like this. So if I'm advising her as a crisis communication client, I tell her, you can talk the talk all you want about cleaning things up, but you're going to need to walk the walk. So she is going to have to get rid of bad influences around her. She may need to change her team. She's going to have to be on the straight and narrow for a while. Don't get into the trash talk. Don't, watch what kind of situations you put yourself in. I don't know about you two gentlemen, but I distinctly remember my parents saying to me, don't hang around with the wrong people. That's what's going to get you in trouble. Somebody needs to sit her down and explain this. I don't care what sort of, misguided loyalty or obligation she feels. She needs to be about herself in this case. Now, my understanding is that the promoters are talking about trying to reset the clock and set up the fight again. But Daniel, to your point, in addition to going for a belt in the third division, the record would have also broken the record for getting 3 division titles in the least amount of fights. And the current record holder is Lomachenko. So she would have had the chance to.
And Tanaka.
And Tanaka, there you go. She would have had the chance to break a really impressive record held by 2 very impressive performers, male. So that is gone. I mean, that's gone. If she doesn't get this, back together in the next fight, if they can't re-rack this fight and start it again anytime soon, I don't think she's going to want to sit on the sidelines. So, if she has to book another fight with somebody else, not for this title, she blew it. She was reportedly going to be paid a purse of $500,000. Well, she didn't get that either. And while maybe she gets paid that much for the fight if it's rescheduled, it still doesn't help her because she's got to pay everybody that worked for her. She's got to pay her trainer. She's got her own bills to pay. And if I'm a sponsor of hers, I'm pretty darn pissed at her right now. So she needs to do some real soul searching. And the problem is there are other women out there whose athletic accomplishments might not be quite where she is or quite have the name recognition, but they also do not present these kind of problems outside the ring. And one that comes to mind, and who was among the women mentioned in an article by Lance Pugmire in The Athletic as somebody who could swoop in and be the real face of women's boxing, is somebody like Franchon Cruz Dezern, who is the WBC super middleweight champion. She's now a unified champion. She is very accomplished. She's got her act together. She's far more mature. She is older, grant her that. But that's the kind of role model Claressa needs to look over to in how she acts outside the ring. And that is going to be important as she moves forward. She will always have a tainted reputation, and her accomplishments in the ring will be affected outside the ring. And this is not the first time she's cheered somebody on in a fight. Let's all remember what happened with Leon Lawson and Jose Ugaskategui. So, this is a bad fact pattern, and it needs to be stopped right now.
And indeed, look, we're not saying just turn all of your family away, but on this one, I had to agree with Gail. You got to get the bad apples out the bunch. It is what it is in this case. In this sport, if you're trying to, any sport or any profession or matter of life, if you're trying to strive for certain things, this kind of incident, it cannot happen again. It should not happen in the first place. And if it means having some real talk with people who are in your circle now, even if that includes some family members, and tell them, look, if you're going to act this way, you can't be part of my team. It be that way sometimes. to talk. It be that way sometimes. You just got to do it. Um, an alarming, disturbing incident for sure. Um, and at the end of the day, first of all, they talk about a rematch. Shields better be. They better be hopeful that. They better be hopeful that Bashir doesn't sue their butt, because he certainly is in his right to do that.
Well, they better hope that he recovers. They got bigger worries.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah, then I want to. That's the first thing, but more importantly, we all here at Pound for Pound Boxing Report and throughout the boxing community, we all want to send thoughts and prayers to James Ali Bashir that he does recover from this, make a full recovery, because
and don't
he's in the hospital now,
yeah.
bleeding of the brain. This is followed surgery for facial fractures.
And
This is not good.
when the victim is 70 years old, I don't care what shape you're in, and certainly he was, I'm sure, far more fit than your average 70-year-old. But still, the powers of recovery are just simply not as good when you're that age.
Yep.
And a lot more stuff can go wrong. If anybody is down on their knees praying, it better be the Shields camp that he makes a full recovery.
Yep. And
yeah,
I'll draw an analogy, okay, with it. And Mike, you might know this. Like on the first DVD called Beef, of the Beef series, Ice-T, like the rapper Ice-T, made a pretty good analogy of what people's inner circles are like in entertainment and sometimes the sports industry, when you come from the backgrounds that Shields comes in from. Your circle is 50%, technically is normally 50% businessmen and 50% thugs. 50% of the people are actually gonna be there in order to try to make not only themselves money, to try to make you money, trying to actually grow your brand. But then there's always that element that's always around it, that is always accessible. That if they need to handle business for you that you can't handle, they'll always be there. It's tough it's tough for somebody to let go of that, but this is something that she has to do. It's a hard choice that she has to do. She has to let go of that hard element, because otherwise, not only she can lose her standing, it becomes a much dicier game, because we have to play worst case scenario in this instance. Best case scenario right now is like I mentioned, but Mr. Bashir makes a full recovery. They have some type of settlement, and they wash their hands of this. But worst case scenario,
he dies.
Okay. Obviously, then her brother is facing at least manslaughter. Manslaughter, or worst case, third-degree murder.
Well, it depends on the state. Some don't have a third degree.
That's what I mean. More than likely, it's going to be manslaughter.
Yeah. Here's the other problem, Daniel. Well, if he dies and Shields was present or had any part in the scenario,
Accessory.
80, yes, absolutely. You're way ahead of me, Michael. She suddenly becomes part of the issue, because if she wasn't there getting on the scale, she was the catalyst, essentially, is what the legal system will say.
Yeah.
And, she then finds herself in a world of problems. Maybe she doesn't go on trial and doesn't get convicted, but that's a huge, big distraction and expense that affects your career. I mean, it is just, as we said at the top of this lengthy discussion, it is a big, hot mess, and nothing good's going to come from it. You've got to learn your lessons, take your lumps, so to speak, make the changes you've got to make, and move on fast.
Exactly. And this is what I mean by like the worst the scenario. Okay. your brother's facing it. You may become an accessory to it. You don't have to go to criminal court for it when it comes into it. Mr. Bashir's family or his estate, they'll sue you into oblivion in a wrongful death lawsuit.
Right. And who's got the deep pockets? Not her brother.
Not her brother's going to be her. Exactly.
It's going to be her. It's going to be Showtime. And it's going to be the promoter. Because they're the ones with the money. And you could easily see them saying, well, you know, the city of Flint, you didn't provide enough security at this public event, or the facility, you didn't provide the security. I mean, everybody who's got any kind of money at all to go after, they'll list them.
Yep.
Doesn't make a difference to them where it comes from or who gets punished. And if I was in their position, I completely understand, and I would do the same thing. Let's remember, O.J. Simpson didn't get convicted of a crime, but he got sued and lost in civil court.
Yep, and this is a difference. And let's not forget, like, even they were trying to make a case. I remember when there was these double jeopardy. Like, no, it's a civil court. It's not a criminal court.
Oh yeah, both can continue at the same time. Most people let the criminal justice system play out first to see how it goes, and then file a civil lawsuit. Because if you're going to prison for it, you know, there's really not a lot of sense to file a civil suit at least right away. But in this case, there are a lot of deep pockets, so they might go forward against the promoter, against Showtime, against the Dort Civic Center, all that.
I'm gonna cut the conversation off because we can go literally all night about this troubling situation, disturbing, one of the ugliest incidents that I've seen at a weigh-in, maybe ever. She's going to have some issues on her way for the foreseeable future, Claressa Shields. But first and foremost, we all want to send our thoughts and prayers and hope for a speedy and full recovery for one James Ali Bashir. Let's move from, again, I've always say when boxing is bad, we talk about it, and that certainly was bad. Let's move on to do some recaps here and talk about something that was surprisingly good. And I'll go to you on this one, Daniel. We were supposed to be on the show last week, and during that time, we were going to preview Gennady Golovkin, Sergiy Derevyanchenko. Turns out that fight which took place at MSG, a whole lot better than most people expected going in, as Triple G. Sorry, Stans. Sorry, Triple G boys. He was given hell by Derevyanchenko. The scores were 115, 112 on two scorecards, and 114, 113 on the third. For me, I had Derevyanchenko winning. Had him winning by a point. Derevyanchenko was knocked down, but I was really surprised that how he was able to put serious punishment on Triple G. I've never seen Triple G hurt really, but Derevyanchenko hurt him in that fight. The body shot.
Yep.
Derevyanchenko, in my opinion, outworked Triple G for most of that bout. From round 5 on, he got the better of the action, and at points and times, dare I say, he was kicking Triple G's ass in there. Yeah, I know in the aftermath we heard word of Triple G. He was sick coming in and whatnot. But the Gennady Golovkin we're used to seeing, that wasn't him. And I don't want to take any credit away from Sergiy Derevyanchenko, who put on one hell of a fight and gave Gennady Golovkin all that he could handle.
Yeah. Let's look at whole lot of it. A lot of people thought after the first round it was going to be another like Triple G showcase. Big drama show. But Derevyanchenko showed his mettle into it. And let's not forget this little key part of the detail. One of the reasons why Derevyanchenko gave Triple G so much trouble, he had a blueprint already. from the same architect,
Daniel
and Andy
Jacobs
Rozier.
and the
Daniel
trainer.
Jacobs and the trainer, Andy Rozier. So Rozier knew the game plan. He knew how to affect Golovkin. And he just adjusted it to a fighter that didn't have the height advantage that Jacobs has against Golovkin. And it worked wonders. And now I know, and I know our good friend Jacob points it out that whenever we talk about the Canelo situation with Golovkin, but Golovkin is starting to show his age. Like the body shots that he took from Derevyanchenko, he took them a lot better a few years ago. But I will say this: when you had two hard fights, even when you can argue that you won one of them against somebody that is as a proficient a body puncher as Canelo Alvarez, that gives you long-term damage. And that's pretty much started to happen with Golovkin. He started to show a little bit of rust and a little bit of age when it comes to this fight, even though he did well. He did well in the fight in the beginning, but Derevyanchenko came back and showed better. And it shows two things to me. It shows that it wasn't like a PBC buildup, the way that his record was and the way he was ready. And the second thing that it shows me is that the middleweight division is getting a lot more full by the year of actual contenders. Even as arguably the top guy is right now trying to fight two divisions up. So it's a very, very good fight. Very, very, very entertaining fight. And it's hard to dispute with the scorecards. Like there were a lot of rounds, particularly in like the middle, like from round 3 to round 6, that you can say can swing either way. And that could give the fight to Golovkin or to Derevyanchenko. But it was a good, entertaining fight. And guess what now? There's an actual incentive for as much as Canelo doesn't like it, there's a now legitimate incentive to fight Golovkin again, even if he doesn't like it, even if he has the same attitude that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, that he feels like he doesn't deserve a rematch with Golovkin. Anyway.
I'll go to you, Gil. Your recap. Were you surprised in what you witnessed? The level of shock that Derevyanchenko gave Triple G. Are we seeing Gennady Golovkin on the slow descend in his career?
I wouldn't use the word shocked. I would say I was very, very impressed with Derevyanchenko. And you know what? It reminded me just a little bit of Shawn Porter's approach toward Errol Spence. You know, they figured out the right game plan for their skill set and applied it under the guidance of terrific coaching from the trainer in the corner. To me, a lot of the difference in the fight, honest to God, was Andre Rozier. He's the MVP of that fight. He did an absolutely superb job. I've heard a lot of criticism of Jonathan Banks. Personally, I love the guy. He's a decent human being, but he needs to up his game as a coach. He really suffered in comparison to Rozier. It was pretty hard to look as good as Rozier did and as sharp as he did. And, you know, and he's just frankly so much more experienced. So maybe it's an unfair comparison, but Banks didn't serve Golovkin all that well. And for all those people who were disappointed when he left Abel Sanchez, we got a lot of people wagging their fingers and saying, see, might not have been the best idea. There were reports he was ill. There were reports he was so ill he was hardly able to train the last week to 10 days. There were also reports, apparently, that he had a slightly banged up right hand. Don't know whether that's true or not. And obviously, a 37-year-old fighter is not going to have the skills of a 27-year-old fighter or 25-year-old fighter. They're just not. Father time comes for everybody except Bernard Hopkins. But there's always an exception. And so seeing somebody's skills break down is inevitable due to age. And he has freely admitted that he trains differently than he used to. He needs a lot more rest and recovery. And he really needs to look at all those elements. I think it wasn't just one thing. I think it was the perfect storm of a lot of problems. And it's unlikely all those problems are going to be present in the next fight. But he's got to really dig deep, look hard, assess what happened, and determine how do I, one by one, address each of these things. Does he need a new trainer? Believe it or not, I just read an interview with, of all people, Nacho Beristain.
Exactly, yeah.
Who thought that Banks did a terrible job and that he was a lot of the problem, which really surprised me. And he also, if you read that interview, Daniel, you know what I'm saying, he also seemed to put a lot of stock in the fact that maybe Golovkin was not feeling his best. Having been sick the last week or two, I sympathize. I've had nothing more than a garden variety cold, and it kicked my ass. And I'm a very healthy person. I rarely get sick. But I can only imagine how that affects you when you're a high-level athlete going for big, big stakes. So I think everybody needs to slow their roll about Golovkin's career being over and he's in the tank and he aged overnight. I don't think that's it. I think the decline is much less steep than that, and it was made worse by several other issues. And I really do think the trainer issue is probably the biggest issue he's going to need to solve. So we'll see what happens. He can't go back to Sanchez. You know what? That door has been nailed shut. Where else he goes? You know, it's a good question. I would like to see him consider a coach that's in his area, trains out of Churchill Boxing, which is the old Wild Card West. Dmitry Bivol's trainer, Gennady Mashianov. They do share the same first name, ironically. They both speak Russian, obviously. Mashianov is a very technical coach. He looks for very precise delivery of all of boxing's fundamentals. You know, most people have commented, seeing Dmitry Bivol fight, about two things: his speed and his footwork. That's Mashianov. Those things can overcome the march of age that diminishes the power a little bit. And he's right there. He doesn't need to go across the country to train with him. When they're in California training, they're virtually down the street. It would make sense to me to make that kind of a switch, and it wouldn't be too tough for him. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's a very weird combination when it comes in the way the Jonathan Banks Golovkin relationship has shaped up. It will be honest, it hasn't worked. I read that interview with Nacho, and just like when you have a Hall of Fame trainer who really doesn't have really any skin in the game, like he's not training a potential opponent, Golovkin. He didn't have any issues with Golovkin. When somebody like that, but it points it out that, yeah, your trainer may not exactly be the best person for you. You may have to listen. Because I'm not saying Jonathan Banks is a terrible trainer. No. He's very competent, but I think his specialty has been with heavyweights. With people he's actually fought against, if you think about it.
Final two questions here. I'm going to combine two questions into one. Try to answer it quickly because I know Gail is fighting she's feeling under the weather. Where does Triple G go from here? He talked afterwards. He wants to fight with Canelo. I don't know if this performance will help him get a third fight. If not, could you see him fighting another big fight at 60 against Andrade, testing the waters at 68, coming off a performance in which he struggled, quite frankly? Where do you see Gennady Golovkin going? And this is for both of you.
Well, I think that a lot of where he's going is going to be determined by people other than himself. I think the two obvious choices, well, there's probably three. The first obvious choice is if he really thinks, like I do, that he hit a perfect storm of bad circumstances, he gives Derevyanchenko a rematch. It'd be pretty fun to see. I mean, from a fan standpoint, honestly, I'd be all over that. But of course, where he really is thinking about going is that, that third fight with Canelo. Now, if I'm Canelo sitting at home watching this fight, oh, and by the way, I'm sure if we ask Canelo, did you watch the fight? He's going to say no.
But yeah, he can say that, but there's reports that said that he was asked about Triple G in after the fight. He said he knocked Golovkin out. So
right. So if you know that you're being pressured from all sides to take that third fight, and you just saw that performance, you're saying to yourself, "What the hell?" I mean, if I'm Canelo, I'd feel very confident, and I'd be on the phone to Oscar De La Hoya and Eric Gomez and say, "Go ahead, I'm good, I'm in, go for it." Whether it's next May, next September, whatever their timeline is, go for it. Golovkin could, however, turn to another middleweight in the division. I mean, the obvious choice, and I think not a threat to him from a power standpoint, is somebody like Demetrius Andrade. And Andrade was present for the fight, and Andrade spoke on the broadcast after the fight. He is more of a technical, tricky fighter. He might make Golovkin look bad, but he probably wouldn't lay him on the canvas. So that's, maybe a concern that you wouldn't worry about, and he'd take the fight. I do think there is a real long shot, which is he decides to retire. I think the most likely, depending on his sense of pride and where he really honestly down in his gut thinks he is the third fight with Canelo. He has to decide if he'd be okay taking that fight, losing again for a big payday. But, is that the legacy you want to leave? Really? Does the money override what could possibly happen? Based on my interview with him a few weeks before this fight, he is very morally discouraged about the state of boxing in general and how it's treated him over the 20 years he's been in the sport, 25 for that matter. It wouldn't horribly shock me if he decided to walk away. He walks away with belts, say what you will. And he's had a very good run, better than most. He'll be on the Hall of Fame ballot. He'll get in. We'll see what happens.
As far like the immediate future for Triple G, this was a fight for a vacant title. The IBF might mandate a mandatory defense, so we have to see who is number one now in the category, at least the number two. But probably the two logical outcomes are Canelo and Andrade, because Canelo, obviously, like I mentioned it, you had two hard fights with the guy, and honestly, you can make a good argument that you won one of those. And technically, economically, it's still the biggest fight you can make. The second one, Andrade, is, well, I'm just not going to try to knock you out, but yeah, he can embarrass you. Is one of the reasons why he's such a hard opponent to make. That in the foolish decisions he sometimes makes outside of the ring as far as business. But there's probably the two paths that you can see him going into, because retirement's probably not going to sit well, even though we know he wants to spend time. Golovkin wants to spend time with his family, wants to see like his kids grow up. At the same time, I can tell he's the type of person that, particularly the Canelo situation, is going to keep gnawing at him if he just retires. And if he watches Canelo again, like conquer another weight division, it's going to leave a bad taste in his mouth. So I could definitely see him pushing the fight. I could definitely see him becoming much, much more prudent in finding a new trainer. And Gail mentioned a pretty good turn from a technical standpoint. I could probably say just to get a good case, because if we think about it, they both fought a similar style, so he's kind of used to it at this point. Why not also John David Jackson, who can mix pretty well the technical aspect and then still highlight the power that Triple G has, and he has to experience it with Kovalev. And John, well, granted, we know Teresa, we know he can deal with. We know John David Jackson, up to a certain point, can deal with the temperament of somebody like Golovkin, or somebody like, because you have to deal with somebody returning around the Kovalevs. So that would be a good one. And obviously the other candidates, the usual suspects, Joe Goosen, Robert Garcia, Joe Diaz. So there's pretty good candidates in that area that you can go to. But if I'm honest,
go ahead.
But if I'm honest, I would probably say he would probably have to go back to Abel. But he burned that door with kerosene.
Yeah, there's no way going back to that. Nah, it's not going to happen. Let's move on to fight that took place a couple of weeks ago that I really want to talk about. I'll start the conversation with you, Gail. Look, we previewed Spence and Porter, Errol Spence versus Shawn Porter. IBF, WBC welterweight titles on the line. Unification bout took place Staples Center in LA. One of the things I had said during the preview was I want to see Shawn Porter fight with force. I want to see the Porter that I saw against Alexander, against Malignaggi. I thought Spence would win, but I thought Porter would give him a good go. And man, did he give him a good go. This may be my leading candidate for fight of the year, Gail. Fantastic bout, back and forth all the way, no real lulls of the action. Spence ended up winning the decision, but he was given the toughest fight of his career by far. In the eyes of many, the knockdown that he scored in round 11 with the right hook, that was the difference during the fight. But in the aftermath, yes, I give Spence credit for what he did, but the first thing that came to my mind, Gail, was folks have got to start giving Shawn Porter his just due. He's fought everybody, and he's given everybody he's given everybody a tough fight throughout. No one has dominated him. Has he won all of the big fights? No, but his resume is right up there with anybody in the sport, and I applaud him as much, if not more, than Errol Spence. Terrific fight, Gail. But for me, even though Spence got the win, Porter stole the show.
Well, if you want to put your stock options down on one guy or the other, whose stock went up after that fight, it was Shawn Porter. I actually called an upset for Porter in my column before the fight. I predicted it would go the distance, not a knockout, which it did. And my prediction was based on whether or not Shawn Porter could impose his version of the fight plan on the fight on Spence. Make it a little rough, a little crazy, a little messy, be a pressure fighter. It's exactly what he did. He was controlling the tempo and the style of the fight throughout. And while he might not have landed as many punches as Spence, you could argue that he landed a lot of the harder punches. And you could also argue that he was by far the better ring general because the pace of the fight was his pace. You have to give both men credit. The fight wouldn't have been nearly as good if they hadn't both been in absolutely phenomenal physical condition. Oh my God. Whatever their training regimens are, it worked. And frankly, I've never seen Shawn Porter in that good a shape. It really is a shame that the punch he took from Spence caused that little flash glove touch knockdown. But the truth is, almost any other fighter would have gone down on his ass on that punch. The fact that Porter stayed on his feet is truly amazing. You know, the scorers, at least among the media present, and I was ringside there at Staples Center, were all over the map. There were a lot who scored for Porter. I would have leaned for Porter, but I'm always somebody that looks at those knockdown rounds and thinks, well, we're pretty close there. Wouldn't have surprised me at all, to see it go either way. But I really was leaning toward Porter in that fight. Still, he gets, I know it's not a W. It's not another notch in the W column. It absolutely is a moral victory for Shawn Porter. I mean, who wouldn't want to see him again? And he wants a rematch. I don't think Spence is foolhardy enough to give him one, frankly. And Spence, I hope, walks away from this fight learning a hell of a lot about himself, because his opponents, if he really does fight the top guys in the division, are only going to keep getting tougher and keep presenting new puzzles to solve for him. So Spence was made to look a little bit human. That's okay, because if he learns something from it, it's still a very worthwhile fight experience for him. Very exciting fight. I'm not in the camp getting all excited about fight of the year. I mean, I really think we have forgotten, first of all, Andy Ruiz's upset over Anthony Joshua. And I would really have to go back further to a action fight like Roman and Doheny for an action-packed thriller fight of the year type fight. Still, it was a great fight. It was a fun atmosphere, a really successful promotion for PBC, putting in the Staples Center. That was a big plus as well.
I will put this above Ruiz and Joshua because this was more even. Once Joshua got knocked down in that fourth round, Ruiz dominated pretty much from there on until the end. While this fight, big unification, no fighter dominated in any way, back and forth, punches and bunches all night long, all fight long. I personally loved it. I'll go to you, Daniel. Your reaction to what you saw, the way that Spence was able to really the way Porter, was really able to take the fight to Spence through a large segment of the fight. What turned out to be a terrific fight.
Oh, terrific is an understatement. I would say it's one of the front runners for fight of the year right now. And I really was surprised that Spence really, for the most part, let Shawn Porter dictate the terms of the fight as far as coming in on the inside, because whenever there was distance involved, Spence was getting the better of the exchanges. But as soon as that had started happening, Porter went in and then imposed his will on the fight. Now, one other thing that tells me, because the other fight you can reference is like it's a fight that he thoroughly dominated until the 12th round. It's maybe like the intensity that Shawn Porter gives to fights requires a lot of conditioning, but even that conditioning has its limits.
He's a truth tester, Daniel. He's a truth tester.
Yep. And like we mentioned, like I mentioned the Adrian Broner fight because he got knocked down by Adrian Broner in the 12th round. And it wasn't a tough knockdown. It was the same thing. It's a flash knockdown. Same thing in this case. This was a flash knockdown. That the style that he fights does make him tired toward the end, but he's able to recover well enough. Was going to it. So there is a breaking point, but at the same time, Porter did a lot. It's very, very rare that the fighter actually wins in defeat. And Porter, for all intents and purposes, won in defeat. People know him for his intensity. People know him because he's a likable personality. And people are going to want to see him again, whether it's a rematch with Errol or maybe the other big fight that Porter could actually take, because I really doubt that Freddie Roach would let Spence near him, but why not try for another belt? Why not try for Manny? There's enough history there with the sparring sessions of the wild card. As for Spence,
I'll get to that question, but go ahead. I'll get to that question. Go ahead.
No, but as for Spence, like this kind of shows a little bit that the major weakness that he's going to have is he really doesn't do well in exchanges with a fighter that really gets on the inside. Because it takes him a while to reset the distance, but if he lets him back in, then he has a pretty tough time. But I agree with the scorecards being that close. I personally, when looking at the fight, I would give it to Spence just mainly based on that knockdown. But it's a fight that, if it happens again, I definitely want to see it again.
In terms of what's next for Porter, I just don't think that at this time of his career, a Pacquiao would want to get in there with someone that physical, that rough, who's still young. I just don't see it. In terms of Spence, we all know what the fight we want to see Spence in there with, the big fight, but we know what we're going to get next from Spence. Now, ask both of you, Gail and Daniel, your reaction to the fact that upcoming for Errol Spence, Danny Garcia. Who's excited about that?
Yeah. Not real thrilled. Not
Man, look. As soon as I saw him in that turtleneck, I was like, oh God. Here we go.
In that burgundy jacket, what?
It's too hot in LA to be wearing that stuff. What is wrong?
Yeah, what 80s lounge did he get that from? I mean, seriously. But clothing aside, this is a making time fight. And worse yet, if we get Danny Garcia, that means we get Angel Garcia. No, thank you.
Oh God, yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth on that one.
I mean, yeah, they're a package deal, and I'm refusing the package.
Yeah, and well, that's the bad part of it. Like with Spence, yeah, I get it. This is the ultimate example of, despite him saying he wants to grow his brand, he's gonna do what Al Heyman says as far as the fighters that he's facing.
Because I just don't want to see it. I just don't want to see it. I just have to be honest about it.
And for all intents and purposes, I'm sorry, Danny Garcia does not deserve it. At this point, he does not. Like, let him get a couple of good wins against top welterweights again, and then I'll consider it. Okay, then I said, okay, then I can consider just based on the merit of the fact that Danny Garcia always up to the Thurman fight found ways to win fights. Like with the obviously the notable exception being the robbery that he benefited from against Mauricio Herrera, but that's like I said, that's the main accolade that Danny Garcia could hang his head on. You can't do that right now. You can't do that right now, and it makes Spence look weak in a way, especially after the fight that he had.
And especially after you got folks like Tim Bradley and others are claiming that he doesn't want any of Bud. That just feeds that beast.
Oh yeah, oh no, Bud fed the beast for himself pretty well the other day.
We basically told him, excuse us for saying this, Gail. He told basically told Spence, for those who don't know, take your panties off and let's make the fight.
Oh hell! Well, hey, it doesn't bother me one bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he needs to take his big girl panties off and get to it. Yeah, and good for Bud for calling him out, and that's the way to do it. With a little bit of nastiness, because Bud has a mean streak a mile wide, which I love, and he knows to turn it on and turn it off when he needs it. That's the way to go about it. That's fair. That's fair game. Absolutely. Now we are hearing, well, that fight's going to happen in 2020, because shortly after the Spence Porter fight, we were hearing, well, it's probably going to be 2021. And I think the fan uproar has at least advanced the clock ticking. So the fans need to keep making a lot of noise. And if we do get Spence Garcia, and especially if it ends up being a pay-per-view, you know what? The fans need to make their vote known by not buying the fight and not attending the fight. That's how you get a say. Because if you make that one a big darn flop, they're not going to waste time on fights like that anymore.
Couple of other fights I was going to talk about in the docket, but again, because we got the show started late and because Gail is feeling under the weather, I don't want to wear her voice down even more. So I'm going to focus on one more fight before we move on to news and some previews here. Dirrell, Anthony Dirrell, David Benavidez, kind of a grudge match here. Dirrell, let's face it, he won the belt in large part because Benavidez, he had a stint with the Coco, as Daniel would like to say. Well, they fought on the undercard of Spence Porter. Benavidez, he won, I want to say, by 9th round stoppage. I'll go to you, Daniel, on this one. To me, this is ho-hum. What pretty much the way I expected. I didn't like the way Benavidez was playing around early on in the bout, but once he finally got down to business, once he finally got serious, I saw what I expected. He just too strong, too active, too intense, too big, and he just ultimately wore Dirrell down and out.
Exactly. It's pretty much how I thought this fight was going to go, as far as the intensity. I kind of figured that this was going to happen. And when it actually started happening, I just said, okay, it's only a matter of time. And it always keeps reminding me of the old adage when it comes to the Dirrell brothers, which is if we could only find a way to combine both of them into one fighter, that would have been one hell of a fighter at super middleweight. Because I'm pretty sure if Anthony had the skill set over the skill set that Andre had, it probably would have ended. Probably would have had the same result. Benavidez was still probably won, but it'll still be more competitive than what it was. But good on Bandera Roja, winning the fight, reclaiming his title, and now we have to see how everything's got to set up a super middleweight, because obviously the big fight you want to make in that one right now is probably the fight that we're not going to see at the moment, which is him and Callum. Granted, I would love to see that. Two big kids, young, title unification. I would love to see it. Or maybe like the Mexican American rivalry would be enough for maybe to lure Zurdo back down to super middleweight. If it makes him enough money. Well, you know, Zurdo certainly kind of needs it at the moment. Not so much the money, but like cachet and personality wise, because unfortunately, as much personality as Zurdo has, he hasn't exactly fulfilled the potential with it, both in and out of the ring. So it went as good as I expected it. And just please, David, stay away from the lines. Just stay away.
I would like to see Benavidez and Caleb Plant, who holds a belt, I want to say IBF belt at 168 pounds, just because there's obvious bad blood there. It would be both have talked pretty nasty about each other, been very disrespectful towards each other, and it would be an intriguing style matchup. Benavidez, he likes to come forward on the front foot, all out assault, head and body. He has a good jab when he wants to use it. One of my problems in this fight with Dirrell is he didn't use the jab enough early, but he has a pretty good jab when he wants to. Against say Caleb Plant, who's more of a slickster with decent punch, a very athletic guy. So it'd be just from a style standpoint and the personal animus they have outside of the ring. I think they got into a scuffle a while back. That would be a fight I would love to see. The build-up would be pretty big, and the trash talk would be pretty big too. Let's move on to some news here. I'm going to skip talking about Mario Barrios and Akhmedov. Barrios fortunate to win a decision that knocked down the 12th round, really saved him as far as I was concerned, because throughout most of the bout, Akhmedov, was giving him a really, really tough go. Move to some news here. I'll go to you, Gail. During the Spence Porter fight, the official announcement was made between Wilder and Ortiz. They're going to fight in November. I want to say the 23rd. Your reaction to that? And I didn't hear this, Gail, but you were saying that Wilder has some pretty interesting things to say about Showtime.
He certainly did. The announcement of this rematch was not a surprise, and really considering everyone else's position in the heavyweight division and their other dance partners, it's the best fight really that Wilder can make right now, and a very sellable fight. It's going to go to Las Vegas, so that'll appeal to a lot of people. I will say Ortiz looked darn good, really, really good at the news conference. He was in a good mood. He looked energetic. So we'll see what happens. But it was fascinating in the Q&A portion, which was being done by Ray Flores at the news conference. And Deontay Wilder made some very pointed comments about Showtime letting him down and, just simply not being able to provide the kind of platform that he needs moving forward. And to make such pointed, obvious comments by name was very surprising to me. If there was any discussion about keeping that relationship going or maybe repairing it, I think that's going to be a very tall order, given the fact that he threw a lot of shade over at Showtime, not be in the right place to, put his career essentially. So he's all in. And, did Showtime really need any more bad news? First, they had that. They lost that fight. And then Wilder slams them to the ground. Oh, and then they lose their main event the next week in the Shields Habazin fight. really, really rough week for Showtime. I think Showtime had a rougher week than just about anybody, even if they ended up on the ass in the canvas.
Yeah, Showtime Boxing got some bad juju going on.
Mhm.
Got some bad juju going on for sure. Quick word on the fact on the announcement of Wilder Ortiz rematch, Daniel.
It's expected. I agree with Gail. Given the current circle amount of opponents, it's the best fight that Wilder can make, and we know it sells itself in a way because Luis Ortiz has already done this. Like if I had a little bit more time in the seventh round, I would be the WBC champion right now. I would have been the one to face Fury instead of Wilder. So there's already a story there, and we have to see how Wilder reacts because remember the last time he had a rematch, he completely dominated Domains to Burn. Granted, it was Domains to Burn. So we'll leave it at that. But the comments that he made about Showtime, that I can understand where he's coming from. Like he was very loyal to Showtime, but at the same time, Fox is gonna give you money. Like Fox has given money to a lot of sporting organizations ever since they lost the UFC to ESPN. So they have money to spend. So I'm not surprised that Showtime seeing that and seeing their subscriber count still fall, back themselves out of the fight, back themselves out of the bidding process. Can a relationship be repaired? Yes. Almost any relationship can be repaired with the right incentives. But in this one, it's gonna take a while. But let the rematch come. We'll see it in Vegas, and hopefully the other things won't happen. We're probably going to talk about to derail that rematch with Fury.
Speaking of Fury, let's give. I'm gonna interrupt things here. Sharp turn. What do you guys think of Fury and what he's doing with WWE right now? This is right up his. Is it? Am I wrong in thinking this is right up Fury's alley?
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's built for him. It is built for him. And, I watched it. I mean, he's a fascinating personality. That's why his name is so big in the sport right now. And I get it. And if that's fun for him, I get that. And we're talking about it. I get that. Here's what I don't get. Fury just survived a fight with a nasty set of cuts. I mean, stuck pig bleeding, corner man saved his ass kind of cuts. Kind of cuts that could easily delay his next fight. And I'm not sure he's going to be ready for a February fight. So what in the world is he doing in there, mixing it up? I get it. It's choreographed. I get it. It's scripted. But even choreographed action sequences have accidents. What if he got headbutted? What if somebody accidentally knocked into him and opened up one of those damn cuts again? What the hell is he thinking? Don't mess with your moneymaker. I get wanting to have a little fun. And if he wanted to talk trash at him from the sidelines and catcall him and all that stuff, fine. That choreographed melee in the ring, I kept thinking, oh my God, do not get headbutted, man. Do not get accidentally headbutted while you're all out there dancing around, putting on a show and having some fun.
I think in short, what Gail is saying is protect the bag, man. Protect the bag.
Hell yes. You know what? If he hadn't been cut or injured in that fight with Otto Wallin and he wanted to do that, where there was sort of less on the line, okay, fine, whatever. We're talking about weeks since he was severely cut. And I get it. You didn't see them. They're starting to heal, but they're not healed, okay? The surface skin has knit back. Those cuts take weeks and weeks to knit up properly. And it does not take a whole lot. to bust them open. We were just talking about a fight between Anthony Dirrell and David Benavidez. Dirrell is a guy that has been cut in many, many fights. And I don't care if they're healed up nicely. If you're cut repeatedly and that scar tissue keeps healing over and over, it is really easy to open that stuff up. Fury does not want to get into that position. It's a career ender. Look at Anthony Dirrell. Yeah, he was losing the fight, but he wasn't losing as badly as when he got cut. So I think Fury has got his priorities misplaced.
Oh my God, where to begin in this? Where to begin with this? Let's start it like this. From a business standpoint, it makes sense because of the network that WWE has their SmackDown show on, Fox. So it makes sense from a cross-promotion standpoint. Says now we know Wilder Fury 2 is going to be on Fox. So in that business sense, it makes sense to me. And I would have just left it there. But then they decided to do what they did 2 nights ago. And granted, yeah, you want to give Fury the mic. He's one of the best talkers in the sport. But you're putting him, okay. Apparently the plan is for Fury to go to Saudi Arabia. Mind you, Tyson Fury's religious views and his outspoken nature, going to Saudi Arabia to face a guy who goes by the name of Braun Strowman. Now, Braun Strowman is as tall as Fury. He outweighs Fury right now by probably at least 100 to 130 pounds. But unlike Fury, who I made a running joke of that he should have been scouted by the Dolphins to be an offensive lineman at his worst, Braun Strowman is a fit guy for 385 pounds. And it's a guy who has a genuine athletic accolades, like in softball and in strongman competitions. But he's also a guy who doesn't have a whole lot of experience in the wrestling ring. And also, what he also doesn't have is a very large move set that he can rely on. And this could be a worst case scenario. Picture this. This guy, Braun Strowman, one of his most recent moves is he runs around the ring and then just bumps into you like a bumper car and expects you to bounce off of him. If you do that with Fury,
what are you doing? Using his gut as an offense?
No, he pretty much acts like a linebacker. In a way, linebacker without tackling. He runs around the ring and then just shoulders you into submission. Let's say Fury gets hit by one of those in one of those movesets and lands the wrong way. And this is, like I said, worst case scenario. And it opens the worst cut even worse. All of us, when they made the announcement that the fight is February, as soon as we saw the cuts, I mentioned it. Gus mentioned it. Jacob mentioned it. We all don't think the fight's not happening in February anyway because of how the cuts were before.
Right.
Imagine if they get bad again, which to me also makes me think in the pure back of my head that this is not going to go through. Because somewhere along the lines, Frank Warren and Bob Arum are going to look at the situation. Yes, they're going to see how much money Vince McMahon is going to throw at them. But then they're going to see that's nothing compared to the gigantic pile of money that's waiting for them in the Wilder rematch. And then the joint pay-per-view rights for Fox and ESPN. So I have a bit of a feeling that as much as they're going to hype it up, and in fact, like there's actually going to be a press conference this Friday in front of the T-Mobile Arena for SmackDown, apparently. They're going to have like an actual press conference, and Fury's going to be part of that press conference along with Cain Velasquez. I have a feeling that they're probably going to say this event's not going to happen because, like I said, particularly ESPN been saying like, no, there's too much risk. There's too much risk of you getting hurt and you delaying the fight even more because we have to strike where the iron's hot. So I don't know why they did this. All I know is that I hope it doesn't happen, and I have a suspicion that it won't happen.
One more bit of news here before we move on to preview some fights. For us older boxing heads, we know who Jeff Fenech is. For some younger boxing heads, let me give you some details. Jeff Fenech, former 3-time world champion, bantamweight, super bantamweight, featherweight, inducted into the Hall of Fame a few years back from Australia. Well, Fenech, who has transitioned from a world champion into a pretty competent trainer, took Vic Darcini into the flyweight title and has trained all other world champions. I think he did a brief stint with Mike Tyson as well. He was in Thailand with a group of Australian fighters doing on a training mission in Thailand. Well, he fell ill, symptoms from pneumonia eventually resulted in him vomiting blood. Had to be admitted to his camp. Basically forced him into a hospital. It turned out that what his camp did to him saved his life, as it was discovered that he was suffering from an infected valve in his heart. And yesterday, or last night, I should say, our time, he had open heart surgery to replace that valve. I'm here to report now. I wrote about this for my brothers over at Three Kings last night, that Fenech, the surgery to Fenech was a success. The valve was replaced. He's going to remain under evaluation in Thailand for another 6 weeks, as there is still some lingering infection in his body. But just wanted to give the good news here that Jeff Fenech, he did have the heart surgery. It was a success. His family was able to make it. His wife was there with him. His daughters made it to him in a really touching thing. They was able to land in Thailand and have interaction with Fenech 15 minutes prior to the surgery. And Fenech, being the warrior that he is, even though doctor says it's going to take 6 weeks of recovery, he's going to be bedridden. Fenech, the warrior that he is, he's vowed he's going to be up on his feet walking 24 hours later. That's who Jeff Fenech is for anybody who knows him. So from here at Pound for Pound Boxing Report, and for everybody within the boxing community, we want to say first, we're glad that Fenech, that the surgery is successful, and we all give our thoughts and prayers to him and hopeful for a full and speedy recovery. Let's move on to some fights here. I could talk Joshua Warrington. He has a defense coming up this weekend. But if we're really going to be honest here, Warrington, who struggled against Kid Galahad, he's fighting a guy that nobody knows, that even hardcore heads know little about. So I'm going to skip that. Going to Chicago, going to you, Daniel. Oleksandr Usyk is finally making his heavyweight debut. He was supposed to fight a guy by the name of, I think his name was Sprout, but he tested positive for illegals in his system. Turns out now he's going to fight Chazz Witherspoon. Tell me why I think this is not just going to be a sparring session for Usyk.
First of all, I'm still surprised that Chazz Witherspoon is still fighting.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, I thought, wait a minute. Did they just go to a retirement home and just pick up Chazz Witherspoon?
He had a fight in March.
March what year?
Hey, ain't dead yet.
Yeah, but okay. We all kind of knew that
I
his
mean, look,
debut.
if Fresno Kendo's still hanging around, he's basically AARP so.
Yeah, but in Fres's case,
Hey.
he has a legal standing to actually still continue. He has he is the bane of the existence of the WBA until that situation completely solves itself. But in this, okay, first of all, in this situation, we all kind of knew that Usyk was going to get a cupcake fight for his debut. They were going to give him a cupcake fight, or at least a semi-cupcake fight. We all knew that his first opponent was supposed to be Carlos Taka. And that fell apart. Then they dug up this guy. Obviously, that fell apart, and now we're not down to Chazz Witherspoon. Now, it is, to me, for all intents and purposes, it is going to be a sparring session. But it'll be a good sparring session in the sense of the fact that now we have to see Usyk handle somebody who is naturally bigger than him. So it'll be a good test in that front, because then you can actually test yourself against them to like the Joshuas of the world, because that's probably still the plan. Even if Joshua loses toward Ruiz again, there's a good chance that the money fight that Eddie Hearn's still picturing is going to be that Joshua Usyk fight. So it's a good measuring step, but it's supposed to be. It's going to be something simple, because with Usyk, you probably get, even though his skill set is very, very admirable, and we know what he brings into the ring, you still have to ease him in to a division where almost every fighter has the potential to knock you out, just because it's the nature of the heavyweights. So it's going to be a sparring session, but it'll be actually a sparring session that will have some interest.
You got anything for this gal? Anything, or should we move on?
I do want to just verify that, yes, Chazz Witherspoon was in the main event of a card at the fabulous Showboat Hotel and Casino in Atlantic City against a Panamanian heavyweight named Santander Salgado. And he won.
Who?
Santander Salgado.
Again, who?
Yeah.
Mike, you should have that meme available at all times whenever something like this happens.
Oh my God. Well, if I have been in the Showboat Hotel, I have actually stayed in the Showboat Hotel. The Showboat Hotel is the hotel they use as the cheap shit fighters hotel if you're having any other fight in a boardwalk property at the Hard Rock or Ravel or whatever. It has seen better days. And when I found out they did professional fight cards there, I said to one of my fellow companions, where? Well, they've gutted out a little space on what used to be the casino floor, and that's where they do the fights. Nevertheless, he has had a pro fight, and he's only been stopped twice out of 41 fights. And, you know, what were they going to do on short notice in particular? First of all, they had trouble finding opponents for Usyk as it was. So you weren't going to get anybody on the level of, say, a Michael Hunter. I heard his name floated. Not going to happen. You couldn't cross promotional lines. That let out a few other guys. You know, I thought good old Charles Martin might get the nod. He's like the understudy for the heavyweight division. But hey, Chazz Witherspoon, get your check, sir. You know, give him some rounds. We're all going to get to see Usyk. And what I have enjoyed in the lead up to the fight is Usyk being Oleksandr Usyk. If you haven't followed him and his antics, I'll put it that way, on social media, get yourself to boxing Twitter, get yourself to the Instagram, watch him having a good time, interacting with people. he is the most loose fellow I've ever seen. Loose as in he is so relaxed, and he's such a diabolical looking guy. I
He
mean,
looks like Charles Manson, but he's like
oh my
a
God.
Joker.
Yes, he looks
Yes.
so intimidating, and he knows it. And you can tell he absolutely enjoys it. On the other hand, he loves a good laugh. There's a video of him where, and I can't recall who the person in the boxing community was, but he had just showed up in Chicago. He's there to cover the fight. He's not one of the bigger name guys. And he's walking down the street and he looks inside the big plate glass window of like a restaurant or something. And Usyk's in there, right? So he fires up his phone and walks up to the window, and Usyk sees him. You know, most guys would turn their back or walk away. Oh no, Usyk came right up to the other side of the glass and starts clowning him. I love this guy. You know, he enjoys life to the fullest. I think that's why we're all so, enamored by him, and we just want to go along for the ride, and then he gets in the ring and just busts people up. So I'm glad they saved the fight. It was going to be a showcase fight no matter what. Who are we kidding? And it's Tyrone Spong that he was going to fight, former kickboxer. He was going to have his way with that guy.
Spong, Sprite, whatever. He was a no-hoper as well.
Yeah.
I'd at least rather see an honest boxing veteran like Chazz Witherspoon in there. Truthfully, I'm okay with it. We're not going to get a big time fight for Usyk for another probably fight or two at the very least.
Going back to you, Gail, for this next fight. We talked about Spence Porter being one of the fights of the year. Well, I'm not going to put that as when it comes to women's boxing. I'll just say another fight that was a real doozy was Jessica McCaskill. Her junior welterweight unification bout against Erica Farias took place earlier this year. McCaskill won. Many people thought Farias, at the very least, the fight was closer on the scorecards. The fight was closer than the scorecards indicated, and I know quite a few people who felt that McCaskill indeed lost that night. They're going to fight a rematch on the undercard of Usyk and Witherspoon this coming Saturday in Chicago. Your thoughts on this rematch? Are we in for another good one? Because just based on styles, the first fight was outstanding. I think this shapes up to be another outstanding fight too. I just think that round one of this rematch is just going to be a continuation of the first fight. It's going to be basically round 13.
You read my mind. Absolutely.
Not round 13. Excuse me. Round 11. Round 11.
Absolutely. These are all action fighters. This is McCaskill's hometown, so it's a big deal for her. And both of them don't know any way to fight other than to just bring it. This is the female version of Salido and Vargas. And who doesn't want to see that? These women are putting on extremely entertaining fights. These are the kind of women professionals, people who don't think they like women's boxing should watch, because what they lack in technical skills, they make it all up in fire, in aggressiveness, and in heart. They give it all, and they'll put on a great show. It's the perfect venue. It's a good fight for the undercard, and it might make up for the lack of the main event going very far. So well worth watching. And I'm one of those people that it was a very close fight. Not a robbery to go to McCaskill, but Farias is skills wise, she is the better fighter. But McCaskill fights on sheer guts a lot of the time, so that could take you a long way.
One last fight to talk about, Daniel. Dmitry Bivol, I believe, is going to fight on this card as well. Look, Bivol, to me, he's the best light heavyweight in the world. So this is another showcase bout for him, in my opinion, against Lenin Castillo. Uh, Castillo gave Marcus Brown a tough go. I want to say last year. I think might have knocked him down. Uh, but I just think that personally, Bivol, who he got shook up a couple times against Joe Smith, even though he dominated the majority of the fight. Smith got his attention, hurt him. I just think that Bivol, high level skill, can move. He has enough power to keep you honest. I just think from a technical standpoint, Castillo is not on the level.
Yeah, and that's going to be the situation. This is, to me, is going to be like a typical Bivol fight in the sense that Bivol will start dominating from a technical standpoint, and if he can't sense that he can't get the knockout within the first 3 or 4 rounds, he's going to put everything on cruise control. Like I said, I don't expect as much as far as the difference when it comes into it, a technical difference. But we all know pretty much some of the moving pieces that are thrown into it. Obviously, with the light heavyweight division mostly being dominated by ESPN, there is that sliver of a chance, and like Bivol did mention this, even going down to super middleweight because he is a small light heavyweight. If you go back to super middleweight, he'll do it for a big enough fight. He may not have to, because let's say he wins well enough, and then Canelo beats Kovalev, then you have a pretty decent, pretty made fight on that the zone can sell on its own. Because it'll be a time unification.
Like I said, Bivol, I just think he's that good. He's one of my favorite fighters to watch. I love how he fights. A perfect blend of offense and defense. And you mentioned his trainer earlier in the show, Gail. I think he does an excellent job with him. In short, in my opinion, Dmitry Bivol is one of the more complete fighters in the sport. And I think we're going to start to shut the show down on that note. Going to you, Gail. I know you was doing this show under the weather. I thank you for joining us, even though you were not 100% this evening. For those who want to, first of all, I want to give a shout out to Jacob before I go to you. I want to give a shout out to Jacob, who was unable to make the show tonight. Jacob from Japa Boxing and the Wrong Real Movie Podcast. He was unable to make it. Give a shout out to Gus from Corruption and Boxing. I want to give a shout out to my brother over at Three Kings Bow of Three Kings Boxing and Truth and Facts Sports Talk. Back to you, Gail. Gail from Communities Digital News. For those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk media training, and for those who, fingers crossed, hopefully will be part of a future Let's Build Together Fitness Challenge. Let the folks know where they can find you.
Thank you very much. Hey, sometimes you just got to get in the ring hurt, right? I've been in a kinship with Triple G. What can I say? But, I escape without too much damage. You can find me at Communities Digital News, which is COM, C-O-M-M, Digi, D-I-G-I, News, comdiginews.com. I have a column I should have posted in another day or two, an interview with the youngest ever prospect signed by Top Rank. Michael and I were talking about it a little bit before the show. I think you're going to be very, very impressed by this young man. I certainly was. So stay tuned for that.
Indeed. So yeah, absolutely. Look out for that. And once Gail puts it out there, I will make sure to put it on I will share it on Pound for Pound Boxing Report, Twitter, and Facebook page. I will go to you. I'm going to you, Daniel. Daniel from the Inscriber. For those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially when it comes to the Miami Heat, the preseason just started. Let the folks know where they can hit you up.
Yeah, sorry about that tonight's game, Mike. Waiters out and lives apparently, but yeah, you can definitely find me on. You can definitely find me on Twitter, Ruckus99. Uh, Me and Joe and Francis were boxing news. We're gonna do something a little bit different this week. We're gonna do little short segments when it comes to the show rather than a lengthy pod because we're working with with an app that does little short segments that automatically loads it to YouTube.
Oh,
So
cool.
yeah, so we're gonna try to do little short segments, little short podcasts focused on certain things and see how we can match them in together. So it'll be an interesting something to do tomorrow, but it'll be fun. And the only other thing I mentioned, I put it on the DMs with you and Gail. If you like the only saving grace of the Tyson Fury Braun Strowman situation is what I sent you because despite all the danger that Braun Strowman can actually do in the ring, he has some similarities with Tyson Fury.
Oh, I see it now. So yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that distracted me. I see it now. Yeah, this distracted me. I'm not gonna go into detail what Daniel said, but yeah, this is quite hilarious. Um, Before I go to where you can find me, I mentioned that I do write for Three Kings Boxing. I recently conducted an interview with a couple of local prospects from my home state of South Carolina, Delquan Dennis, Elijah Seawright. If you check out the Three Kings Boxing Facebook page, that's the number three, KINGS Boxing Facebook page, and you go to their videos or their posts. If you scroll down, you can see my interview with Delquan Dennis, Elijah Seawright. Um, I want to thank the folks at Elite Boxing Gym in Columbia, South Carolina. Uh, their work behind the scenes, I think to Nisha Brown specifically worked with her behind the scenes to get the interview with those young men. So please take time to check that out. My interview for Three Kings Boxing with Delquan Dennis, Elijah Seawright. Both fighters are set to make their pro debuts. Dennis making his pro debut, I think, in a week. Seawright, he's going to make his pro. Seawright, 17-year-old Elijah Seawright, is going to make his pro debut February 2020. For those who want to talk boxing, for those who want to talk music, for those who want to talk fitness with me, you know what it is on Twitter, Brother JR at Brother JR76. As I said at the beginning of the show, if you want to find out all things pound for pound boxing report, the blog page is the place to go to, P4P Boxing Report .wordpress.com. Links at the top right of the page where to find us all over social media, where to find us on platforms that carry RSS feeds, where to find the donate buttons. I forgot to mention that. Let donation be the best nation. I don't care if it's $1, $2, $5, whatever you can spare. Please shoot some coins to Pound for Pound Boxing Report because nothing is free, including the production of this podcast. And last but certainly not least, the link to my online fitness page, my online coaching page over at Beachbody. Um, like I said, hopefully we'll get Gail on. Hopefully we'll get Daniel on too to a fitness challenge. I just did an interesting little thing with the folks there within my personal fitness group. So check it out if you're interested in anything Beachbody, any exercise, Shakeology, any of the challenge packages. Please check out my link on Pound for Pound Box Report blog page. On the next episode, we will do a recap of um, Oleksandr Usyk and Chazz Witherspoon of Jessica McCaskill and her rematch with Farias, Dmitry Bivol, and his upcoming fight against Castillo. And we will do a preview of unification bout. That's always a good thing. This time in the light heavyweight division. This fight is taking place in Philadelphia on ESPN, not ESPN Plus. You can actually see this fight on ESPN as Oleksandr Gvozdyk fighting Artur Beterbiev. Gvozdyk, WBC champion at 175 pounds. Gvozdyk, WBC champion, Beterbiev, IBF champion on the undercard of that. Luis Collazo is fighting, and that will be the main focus. Be previewing that fight. So yeah, recap of the Usyk Witherspoon card and a preview of um, light heavyweight unification bout between Gvozdyk and Beterbiev. So for Gail from Community Digital News, for Daniel the Inscriber, this has been episode 268. Again, apologies for getting the show started late. Technical issues on my end. This has been episode 268 of Pound for Pound Boxing Report. I am your host, Michael. We will see you next time. Everyone have a good evening. Good night.